Psalm 20, chapter 20. Psalm 20, because there are no chapters in 20, Lord forgive me. Psalm 20, verses 1 through 5, New Living Translation. In the times of trouble, may the Lord respond to your cry. May the God of Israel keep you safe from all harm. May he send you help from his sanctuary and strengthen you from Jerusalem. May he remember all of your gifts and look favorably on your burnt offerings. May he grant your heart's desire and fulfill your plans. May we shout for joy when we hear of your victory, flying banners to honor our God. May the Lord answer all, somebody say all of your prayers. I want to preach and teach tonight from the subject, this is my prayer for you. This is my prayer for you. As pastor of this church and your spiritual leader, there are certain things that I am, if you will, required to do on your behalf. I'm required to live to the best of my ability on a daily basis in accord with God and his word. I am, if you will, as your pastor, required to be with you when life throws you a curveball, setback, or a certain misfortune. I am required to teach you what thus saith the Lord and preach the unchangeable, undeniable word of God to you on a weekly basis. I'm required to represent you at conferences, conventions, and in areas that this church is affiliated with, and I should also be willing to stand with you and your family, your children, your loved ones in the good and the bad that life has to offer. However, I am also required, most of all, to not only do the aforementioned things for you, but I am, if you required, Elvis, if you will, required to pray for you. Not only should you be praying for me as your pastor, but I should be praying for you as well. And it's a sad indictment on a pastor and a people who do not pray one for. Come on and holler at me. I should be lifting your name up to the Lord so that God can step into your life and help, heal, and handle you in such a manner that your life will be changed. And tonight I want us to talk about this subject. This is my prayer for you, because all too often the pastor never lets the people know what he or she is praying for as it relates to them and their well-being. And then we all need a lesson on what we should be doing to pray for one another as it relates to God being a blessing to us. And the only thing I really want y'all to see tonight is, number one, that you and I ought to be praying for each other, and number two, how and what we ought to pray for, and number three, what we ought to do when we hear that God has answered our prayers. Tonight, lest I insert too much of your time, one daughter cooked this morning, and another daughter's cooking now, so I'm not going to be here long with y'all. I want to lift before you some words of David that I feel will help you better understand what we as a church should be praying for. We need to know tonight that each other is standing by the side of one another. I need to know that I've got some folk in the church that's going to go down on their knees and lift my name and my family's name and my dog's name and the aunt's name and everybody else's name that wants to live there in Savageville in prayer. And you ought to go home and know every day of life that you have a pastor that's praying you through, praying your children through, praying your family through. Why? Because that's my job. First of all, David is, Dominique, by the recollection of the theological writer penning this word, around some events that took place in 2 Samuel chapter 10 during David's fight with the Ammonites. And rightly so, it should be duly noted tonight that whenever one goes into battle, he ought to talk to the Lord and ask the Lord to give him what he needs to not only fight, but to fight and be victorious. And here we are tonight. We see David writing this psalm as he commenced to fight one of his enemies. And how many times have we ourselves consulted with the Lord on a potential fight that we were preparing to get into? How many times have we prayed to God in heaven and talked with the Master concerning the battle that we were facing? How many times have we laid before God and waited on God to give us an answer on what we were desiring, what we were praying for? Don't look at me funny. Some of y'all ain't prayed in so long your knees don't even know how to bend no more. It's a difference. It's a difference in praying and cussing. Come on and holler at me. It's a difference in praying and waiting to lay somebody out. It's a difference in you taking the battle into your own hand and forgetting that God said in his word, the battle is not yours but mine. And sometimes we go through what we go through as pastor and people because we refuse to pray and pray right to God. We refuse to be real with God and tell God specifically what we want. That's why I told y'all first Sunday in October we can't leave here till we get some money. We can't go help nobody celebrate until we celebrate the fact that we've made our money to pay our bills. We can't leave our house unattended, not knowing whether some of you Negroes going to bring it second Sunday or not. We got to stay right here and get what we need and then go celebrate with somebody else. And that's what's called being real with your people, just telling you straight up, this is what we want. You know why I'm here. You know what I'm after. Let's get it done. Then we'll take care of the next person. And every now and then, what we find ourselves going through requires us to call on the name of God. And that's what I want you to understand tonight. You just can't be no punk in prayer. God cannot deal and bless you if you have punk prayers. Well, Pastor, what is a punk prayer? What is a punk prayer? Punk prayer is these little pretty boy prayers that we pray in church on Sunday. I hung that terrestrial ball in space and baptized it with a liquid mist and ordered a variety of blooming flowers and transfigured them into the God of Abraham, the Isaac, and Jacob, the God, the supreme architect of our world. Those are pretty prayers. But when my back is up against the wall, I don't want no pretty prayer. When the doctor walks in my room and tells me he's got to split me open, I don't want no pretty prayer. I want a prayer that's going to leave me and go straight to glory. So, some of us tonight are fighting in a situation. Some of us tonight are fighting an issue. Some of us tonight may not be fighting like David was, but we will in some time or another be involved in a fight. And when you find yourself in a fight, you need to be prayed up. When you find yourself going through something, you need to be having a prayer on your lips. And that's why I hear David saying in the first verse, girls, give it to me, Psalm 20:1, in times of trouble, may the Lord respond to your cry. And that's challenging to us tonight because when we look at it and consider, James Lewis, the troubles that many of us are currently facing, we can't help but agree with David when he said that he hoped the Lord would respond to our cry. And that's what I wanted the Bailey family to understand Saturday, that they had a God that would respond to their cry. They served and worshiped a God who would respond to their prayer. And somebody in here tonight needs to know that just because it looks like it looks and it smells like it smells and it sounds the way it sounds and it's acting the way it acts, God still responds to prayer. God will hear and respond to our cry. David said in the latter portion of verse 1 that he hoped the God of Israel would keep you safe from all harm. And a good pastor would pray and will pray rather this prayer for his people on a daily basis. A good pastor will pray that God will keep you safe. A good pew member will pray that not only will God keep their pastor safe, but God will keep the children safe. God will keep the mother safe. God will keep the brother and the sister and the fellow sister and brother safe within the arms of the church. It's nothing like being kept and protected by someone in whom you know can handle your problem. It's nothing like being kept by somebody who you know that no matter what you face, he's going to be there with you. It's nothing like being kept by somebody who you know will stand by your side when everybody else turns and walks away. It's nothing like knowing that you serve a God who will step in. Somebody in here tonight ought to know that we serve a God who does not mind stepping into your life, stepping into your sickness, stepping into your problems, stepping in to what's bothering you. And I don't know who I'm talking to tonight, Clarence, but that ought not be not only my prayer for you as your pastor, but that ought to be your prayer for those in whom you love as well. It ought to be, if you will, your request for your children and your parents, your friends, and yeah, even your old enemies too. You ought to be in constant prayer for the people you say you love. If you love me, not only will you show it, but you'll lift my name up in prayer. Yeah, I thought I'd hit home there. If you really love me, I'm not talking about that kind of love, Ann, that you turn on and turn off according to the days of the week. But I'm talking about the kind of love that when you done had an argument with me, come on and holler at your boy. That love don't stop. I'm talking about that kind of love when your wife or your husband makes you hot enough to cuss. You don't change your love. You might not speak for a while, but you don't. Somebody ought to holler at me. You don't stop loving just cause they do something wrong. You keep on loving and you keep on praying for them. You ought to be in constant prayer for those people that you love. During these last several weeks, my prayer life has gotten longer, more drawn out and stronger. I just don't pray them pretty boy prayers, Elvis, like I pray here in church, to let y'all know that I've got some theological training. But now that greater trials have come and harsher circumstances have arisen, and now that this old profession and responsibility has gotten harder to bear, this pastor finds himself calling on Lord to help him bear his burdens in the heat of this proverbial day. And that's where you need to be tonight. You know your life ain't what you want it to be. Come on and look at me right now. You know you're not where you need to be. You know you still got some skeletons in the closet. You know some of those skeletons still got some flesh on them. You know your eyes still wander. Come on, I'm going to mess with y'all tonight. You know your eyes still wander from time to time. You know you turn your head. I don't know why y'all lie to yourselves. Since y'all want to act like that, I'm going to dig real deep. You know those of you who 60 and 70, you know you still get them feelings of sexual healing. Come on and holler at me. Since y'all don't want to say nothing, I'm going to mess with you. You know you still need love and happiness, and you know that if you're not where you need to be biblically, you know it's wrong. And anything that's wrong and you can't control it, you need to pray about it. I bet y'all say amen now. I know you don't want me to dig no deeper, do you? You need to know tonight that there are some enemies out to get us. They just don't want me as the pastor, but they want and desire you as the church member too. They want the very church itself. And the enemy of 2012 is different. I don't care what you old people say. The enemy of 2012 is different from the enemy of 44. The enemy of 62 can't hold a candle. You got people who were created by God, who God created them, the Bible says, in his own image. Now that they've gotten grown, they're not satisfied with the way they look. So they go to what they call a plastic surgeon. And when I come in here today, I look like this. 30 days from now, I can, if I choose to, and my money's right, come in with my nose pointed more, my lips swiveled more, my hips and my breasts different. Why? Because I'm not satisfied with the way God made me. Now, you mean to tell me that if God made me in his own image, so y'all don't want to help me. If God made me in his own image, I ought to be satisfied with the way he made me. Now, I know what some of y'all saying. Pastor, I got to lose weight. Yeah, I got to lose something too. God didn't make us to be fat. Because the last time I checked, gluttony was a sin. I wish I could teach this thing tonight like I wanted to. And if gluttony is a sin, there's a consequence for sin. And if gluttony is overeating and it's a consequence for sin, teach boy, then the consequence must gonna be that I shall be fat. If I overeat, I know y'all don't want to hear that tonight. If I oversmoke, that's a sin. Well, Pastor, why is that a sin? It's a sin because the Bible declares that your body is the temple of the Lord. And the Spirit of God, come on, Bible readers, the Spirit of God dwells therein. So if I smoke, I'm defiling the body of God. Why? All right, repeat it again. The body that you have is the temple of God. And the Spirit of God dwells on the inside. And if there is a consequence for sin, then that consequence for smoking, defiling the body that God gave me that belongs to him, because you do know you don't belong to yourself, that consequence is lung cancer, and lung cancer equals death. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Sorry, buddy, you can't come back with us. Somebody in here tonight needs to know about the manner in which God can keep you. Somebody in here tonight ought to have a testimony. You ought to be like the hymnologist, ought to be kept by Jesus, kept by his power divine, kept through toils and trials, kept by his hand in mind. Somebody here tonight ought to be able to testify of how the Lord has kept you. Because some of y'all, if you look back over your life, you didn't really think you'd make it this far. You didn't know whether you wasn't fit to die and you wasn't really fit to live, but because of the grace of God, because God kept you in the midst, somebody ought to help me preach tonight, in the midst of your sin, in the midst of your degradation, in the midst of some of us doing some of the wretched stuff that we've done, God has still kept us, and he kept us because somebody was praying for us. Some of us in here tonight, quiet as it's kept, ought to have some precious memories of what the Lord has done for you down through the years. Somebody ought to be teaching these children about the goodness of the Lord and how when they pray and talk to God and how God will in turn answer their prayers. Some of us wouldn't have got out of grade school if we didn't know how to pray. Some of us wouldn't have got out of college, let alone got into college, if we didn't know how to pray. Some of us wouldn't be where we are today on our jobs and in our promotions and living like we're living if somebody had not taken time to pray for us. You husbands in here tonight, it's about like myself that's got a praying wife that prays when you ain't praying, prays when you drinking, prays when you smoking, praise when you running. You ought to tell God thank you for a praying wife. Some of you in here who are husbands, who are wives, and you got husbands that's praying for you with your mean self, with your Jezebel spirit. This is my last night in town. I'm going to Bible study next month, so I'm going to say what I want to say tonight. With your Jezebel, controlling, no count, lying, evil, conniving, ugly acting spirit, you ought to tell God thank you that you got a praying husband. With your petticoat husband. But not only is that our prayer for you, and not only should that be your prayer for yourself, that in times of trouble, God will hear your cry. Give it to me, girls, but I think you ought to pray. Number two, that God gives you some help. Come on and holler at me. I know y'all mad now because I just called somebody a Jezebel. But at the end of the day, you ought to pray and ask God for help. Oh, come on, don't act like you got it all together and you don't need. Come on, man, don't mess with me like that. Don't even play me like that because I know better. Everybody in this room needs some help from God. Everybody in here, I wish I could preach it like I wish these children wasn't in here. Everybody here needs some help to stay sane, if nothing else. Come on. Pastor, why are you always on marriage and relationship? Because that's where most of our problems are. Some of y'all need some help. Just stay together. Some of y'all need some help to work with your children and your grandchildren. Some of y'all need some help just to come in church and speak to people like you're supposed to speak to them. All right, now, look at this. Psalm 22. May he send, you see it? May he send you help from where? From where? What is the sanctuary? The sanctuary is the church. Sometimes what we need, Miss Valerie, can be found right in the Lord's house. That's the problem with some of us in here tonight. When we get here to the Lord's house, we are not focused on the reason why we're here. We're too focused on everything. God, I wish I could preach. I wish I had a voice tonight. We're too focused on what he's doing and what she's doing and why they over there and why they out there and why when you ought to be focused on what you're here. I came to church because I need a word. I need to be uplifted. I need to be inspired. Anybody in here come tonight because you've had one hell of a Wednesday? You've had some trials and you went to the post office and there was some stuff in that box that you really wasn't ready for. You went to a meeting and you heard some stuff today, Patricia, that you really wasn't ready for. You went somewhere this morning and you saw some stuff that you wasn't ready for, but you knew that if you could just get to God's house. David said, he wanted the Lord to send help from his sanctuary. And that's what we come here for tonight, Miss Boo. We don't, as I forestated, come here for show. You ought not come here to argue, fuss, complain. We shouldn't come in the Lord's house for play. But when we come in the sanctuary, when we come here on Sunday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Saturday or any day, we ought to come here ready to receive help. Now, I want you to understand, I told you I'm trying to shift the church. And this is going to sound real radical because what I'm going to say, it is and it is not biblical. But when I say shift the church, what I mean is I don't want us coming in here on Sunday morning and just getting help from the word. I want us coming here and do some networking. Come on, I just messed somebody up right there. But there's somebody in here tonight that's going through something in their life. And you know what's so strange about that? There's somebody else in here tonight that's already been through what you're going through. And you might not get it tonight from my preaching. You might not get it from my clothes. You might not get it from my points. You might not get it. You sure ain't going to get it from the song because y'all were just like me. You ain't never heard that song before. So I know you didn't get it from the song. But there's somebody in this room that's suffering, has suffered from what you're suffering with. And if you just take time to get to know your pew partner, there just might be an answer in the sanctuary for what you're going. Let me go back to the relationship piece. Let me go back to that, because some man in here who has either not been married long or is thinking about marriage may have a question that the sermon or the song or the prayer can't answer or did not answer. But there's some other man in here who's put in some time in the marital blitz that can answer the question. Y'all follow me what I'm saying? There's a woman in here tonight who wants to satisfy her man in the kitchen. And for whatever reason, you just didn't pick it up when you were at home. Maybe it's a generational curse. Maybe your mama couldn't cook. But there's somebody in this room, Violet, who can show that woman what to do in the... Somebody ought to... I know y'all don't want to hear it. And that's why the Bible says, may he send you help from... Boy, you're preaching tonight. From his sanctuary. This ought to be your prayer. When you enter the door, you ought to pray and ask God, God, send me some help. You know what I'm facing. Let there be some help in the church for me. Let there be an encouraging word in the church for me. Let there be something said or done to give me what I need to make it through what I'm facing. And let me find it in. Now, in order for that to happen, you got to come, Dominique, expecting a miracle. Every time we enter the door of this house or any house of worship, and I'm almost done now, we ought to come in here looking for and expecting something great. Not nothing negative, not nothing bad. We ought not come in here expecting an argument, but we ought to come in here expecting to be loved, expecting to be hugged, expecting to be kissed, expecting to be taken care of. We ought to come in the Lord's house on Sunday morning with an expectation that there's somebody in here that's going to treat me right. Can't get no satisfaction at home. Can't get none on my job. Can't get none in my community. Ought they come to the Lord's house? Y'all don't want to help me tonight. You won't get nothing great in here if you're not willing to stand still and see God's grace and mercy manifest itself in your life. You can't come in here ratchet and expect the Lord to do something great in you and for you. You can't come in here, William, and expect the Lord to move in your situation and you're still hating, holding strife within the confines of your heart. You can't come in the Lord's house and expect God to show up and show out in your mess when you're still holding on. Lord, I wish I could preach it. To church hurt and various grievances you've had in the church. You can't expect the Lord to do something for you, to you, and through you in the church if you're not willing to come in the church with the right expectation. David talks about God strengthening us from Jerusalem. It is believed during the time of this writing that help from the Lord came from the temple in Jerusalem. Watch this. But we know through our teaching that our help comes from God. Help don't come from no place. Help does not come from a town or a village or a hamlet. Help comes from he who is able to help us. I look to the hills from which cometh my help. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. In other words, wherever God is, that's where our help comes from. And if God is in the church belongs to him, the church that he made and created, the church that is his very own thing, we who come here ought to be able to receive help. Now, before y'all get it twisted, let me say this here. I'm not talking about giving y'all no money. Somebody here tonight is going to call me a client and say, I need some money. I ain't talking about no money. If you need some money, you need to see people in here that's got money. Don't come to the church because the church don't have no money to give you. I'm talking about help. I'm down and out in my spirit. And I need a word to lift me up. My children treating me terrible. I need you to show me how to love them anyhow. My husband is gone mad. I need you to help. I ain't got no man. I ain't got no woman. I'm tired, as Al Green said, of being alone. Tired of being on my own. I need somebody to help me. Somebody in here tonight ought to be able to step to you and sit you down and say, baby, I know what you're going through because I've been lonely too. And this is how I made it. I know that went over some of y'all's head. David goes on to talk about, may he remember, can I teach it just for about 5 more minutes? May he remember all your gifts and look favorably on your burnt offerings. That's verse 3. Put verse 3 up there, girls. May he remember all your gifts and look favorably on your burnt offerings. And that's challenging because I want you to be blessed for the gifts you give to God. As your pastor, I want you to receive what it is that you need from God because of your faithfulness to him. As a matter of fact, I need you to be blessed because when you're blessed, old boy gets blessed. I need you to be able to keep on getting the things you need and the things that you desire, because if you can get it, that lets me know that there's some hope for me. We ought to be asking God to take care of our children. We ought to be asking God to mend our broken homes and relationships and family situations. But if all I'm doing is asking as your pastor, and you yourselves aren't assisting in making this happen, or if all we do is pray selfish prayers that are centered around only what we can get for ourselves, this prayer thing then becomes lopsided and one track. The flip side of this verse, girls, give me Luke 12:48 Bible study time. Give me that. The flip side of this verse is found here in the middle and latter portion of Luke 12:48, where the Lucan writer reminds us, from everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more, you see it, will be asked. It's not enough for me to be the only one doing the praying on your behalf. But God is requiring you to do something. He is, if you will, requiring you to give more of yourself to that which you're praying for. Watch this now as I teach it here real quick. If you're praying for better children, you need to spend and give more time to your children. If you're praying for your home and a better relationship with your spouse, your man, your woman, then you need to give more attention to them. It's not enough for us to pray or for me to pray, but what we need tonight are some people who are willing to put their prayers into action and do something to get something from God. If you want the Lord to look favorably on your gifts, I'm going to mess with you now, and your offerings, you got to be willing to give him something to look favorably on. If you want the Lord to bless you, you got to be willing to give something to God. You can't come in here, I'm going to mess with you now, in this house and give God $1. Watch this. Knowing you have more money in your pocket, and then you have the audacity to expect a $10 blessing. Let me say it again. You can't expect God to give you something for nothing. Has anybody ever gave you something? I know y'all getting quiet because I'm talking about money. Has anybody gave you anything decent for nothing? God don't give you something for nothing. But Pastor, you wrong, because God died on the cross for my sin. Yeah, he died. But God expects you to live according to his word because he was willing to die. And then you come in the Lord's house with $1 and you got $50 in your pocket. You know you can give God 20 of that 50. Boy, you better leave it alone. Psalm 24. Let's go through this real quick. May he grant your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. See, this is a prayer. And I only use one verse Saturday, but when I read this thing, so through this thing messed with me. This is a prayer that David was praying on behalf of somebody. And this is the kind of praying that we need to be doing. May he grant your heart's desire. And we all talk about that heart's desire. What is our heart's desire? Our heart's desire is this. Our heart's desire is that. So here God, David is telling us, may he grant your heart's desire and fulfill what? All of your, I know you don't like no teaching, all of your. So if I want God to fulfill my plans, seems to me that I'd have to bring my plans before God. Y'all follow me what I'm saying? God can't fulfill my plans if I'm not willing to share my plans with him. And that's why some of y'all's plans fail. That's why some of y'all's plans don't come to fruition because you have not shared them and asked God to bless. When we bless God with ourselves, and when we are obedient to him, and when we work with God and give, and when we give ourselves to him, God will in turn grant our heart's desires and fulfill our plan. Psalm 25, and I'm done. May we shout. I told y'all the last part was what? That we learn how to be happy for the blessings that somebody else gives. May we shout for joy when we hear of your victory. Flying banners to honor God. May the Lord answer all. Look at that, David. David was one heck of a writer. May the Lord answer all. So for those of you who feel that God only answers a portion, David is telling you you're wrong. Because he's saying right here, may the Lord answer all. We shout for joy when we hear. When we hear. Teach, boy. When we hear. So when you hear of your pew partner's victory, you ought to shout. When you hear that your pew partner's children have graduated, even though yours keep failing, you ought to shout. When you hear of your neighbor's marriage still going on, even though you've been in divorce court twice, you ought to. When you hear that cancer is no longer a part of your neighbor's life and you're still going to chemo, you ought to. Yes, sir, brother. When you hear of God blessing somebody else, you ought to shout, happy shout, elephant shout, kangaroo shout. Why? Because God is blessing somebody else and the same way he blessed them. Now, Dominique, here before we get out of here, this flying banners to honor God, that's just a sign of celebration. You know, we celebrate. You see banners when the store opens or comes under new management, or when you celebrate some anniversary time at the store. What do? You fly a banner. In the church, my home church, they do it all the time. I almost do it too much. Every time they have something, they got to put a banner up to celebrate whatever that day is. So when you fly a banner, that's a sign of celebration. That's a sign that you want the world to know something good. Something great is happening. And that's all I want to say. I'm not even going to do nothing else. David teaches us that we ought to shout. And I don't know tonight where you are in your life, but if you have not learned how to shout and be happy for what happens in the life of your neighbor, then you are sad. If you've not learned how to be glad for me when something good happens, then you're pathetic. And God is never going to give you squat until you learn how to be happy. I'm glad you got a new car. I'm glad you got a new house. My roof might be leaking in mine, but I'm glad you got something new. I'm glad you got a new suit. Glad you got a new coat. Glad your child is doing good. My child in jail, but I'm glad your child's doing good. Why? Because if your child can do good, there's hope for mine. If you can get a new house, there's hope for me. If you can get healed, there's hope for me. When the church becomes a church that celebrates with others, then God will bless everybody. Why don't you tell him thank you tonight for what you already know God is doing in somebody's life? Why don't you tell him thank you tonight for what you know God is doing in the life of your neighbor? Why don't you shout happy shouts for how good your neighbor looks sitting beside you? You ought to tell your neighbor, baby, you look good tonight. I might not look like nothing, but you look good tonight. Stand all over the church, that's all I'm going to say. You have come to Mount Zion and get some more Sunday. But I want you to understand tonight that